mama's in the living room watching Judge Judy. I'm in the kitchen eating leftover sushi, and she goes, oh, girl, you gotta hear this one. A man was arrested for running the theme park, and when they said, where's your license? He said, my dog ate it. Oh, you can't make this shit up. Sometimes I wonder if life's just one big cosmic joke. It's like she's on a Reddit, reading r/funny lawsuits, yelling from the couch. As she sips on a Prosecco, makes fun of all the weirdos, and then I hear her shout. It's like she's on a Reddit, reading r/funny lawsuits, yelling from the couch. As she sips on her Prosecco, makes fun of all the weirdos, and then I hear her shout, girl, you gotta hear this one. Mama loves to laugh at how absurd life is, says it's all a comedy and I'm her audience. And I love the way she makes fun of the world. She said, you'll never guess what's true with their girlfriend. It was a man who didn't get us out of the bed. He said, I've been through hell and now I need some help. You just can't make this shit up. You just can't make this shit up. Sometimes I wonder if life's just one big cosmic joke. It's like she's on a Reddit, reading r/funny lawsuits, yelling from the couch. As she sips on a Prosecco, makes fun of all the weirdos, and then I hear her shout. It's like she's on a Reddit, reading r/funny lawsuits, yelling from the couch. As she sips on a Prosecco, makes fun of all the weirdos, and then I hear her shout, girl, you gotta hear this one.
Hey everybody! Today we're getting into the Nikita Casap sentencing from last week. I think it was on Thursday. This is the first time that I've actually had the chance to sit down and watch it. So we are going to look at everything in this sentencing. Well, we're going to hit the highlights. If you don't know, TLDR, Nikita Casap is the teen in Wisconsin, the county that I am from. I love Wisconsin. I really do. Who now has pled guilty to unaliving both of his parents to get them out of the way so he had the autonomy to work with foreign assets and unalive the president. So we're going to start this right away. But before we get into that, I just want to have you ponder a couple of things during the sentencing. What the judge says, how his defense attorney speaks, and will there be federal charges after this sentencing since he still has the plot to unalive the president, even though he will most likely be sentenced to life without parole. That's just my guess. I haven't watched it. However, we will see what happens, because the first thing we ever covered on this topic was a federal search warrant that exposed his manifesto, in addition to talking to people in Ukraine about how to unalive the president. So we will see if we are dropping federal charges, but while we are waiting for those federal charges, we will just go ahead and get straight into the drama of this. Because everybody's got shit to do. It's a Tuesday. Everybody's busy. We're going to watch it at 1.25 speed and get into it.
All right, I'll call the matter. State of Wisconsin versus Nikita Casap. This is 25 CF 598. The court is being assisted by an Italian language interpreter, and she's identified on the screen as Green Linguistics. And it is my understanding that a victim, the mother of Tatiana Casap, is appearing remotely from Italy, and that is she going to come in on the Zoom picture? Then how are we going to know if she's having difficulty in hearing us or having something said, unless she makes some signal to us?
Could she make a signal to the interpreter if they're on via phone.
All right, then the interpreter apparently is going to be the only one there, and I'm going to talk about that in a second. So the interpreter is, I believe, connected to that person by phone, correct, Madam Interpreter?
That is correct. The interpreter is currently waiting for Miss Lydia to call from Italy to my phone because she doesn't have access to Zoom. So
Correct.
she's going to make a phone call to my phone.
She's not yet connected to you by phone?
No, she hasn't called me yet.
Okay. So I'm going to take other appearances in just a second, and I'm going to lay down some ground rules as well. Let's have other appearances, please.
State by Leslie Basie and Brooke Schultz.
Your Honor, Nikita Casap appears in person. He's represented by Attorney Paul Raffel.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. And again, apparently we don't need our interpreter services now because the person who is Italian speaking is not connected with her by phone.
This is going to be interesting. An interpreter used during a Zoom phone call from another country. That's a new one for me. That's definitely a new one. But before we continue on, let me say hi to the chat because we got straight into this. Jeffrey, 108 minutes to go. You were here early. Heidel, thanks for being super mod. And my other super mods where is she? Tammy and Roy is here. And I saw Gail here too. Yay! So Heidel has posted the link for Tallow Truth. I have a discount code for y'all if y'all use Tallow Truth F-Bomb. I'm addicted to this stuff completely. I keep it with me all the time. It's my new lip balm. It's my cuticle oil. It is tallow, beef tallow. Yes, beef tallow. But it's beef tallow, honey, and frankincense, and that's it. So what you put on your skin is very, very important to me since I'm trying to reduce the amount of chemicals. So I am going to pin that to the top of the chat if YouTube Studio will actually work. There's a thing with YouTube asshattery today and Studio not working the way it's supposed to. So I will pin that to the top of the chat. Obviously, it's code SQUID because why wouldn't it be? Now that it's pinned, we can get on with it. And Roy, how are you? How is the wife? Let's see, who else is here? Snipe Hunter! Good to see you. I saw DR Most. French. Hope everybody is doing well. And I'm sorry if I missed you, but I have a feeling I'm going to get a baby squid interruption. So we got to get straight into this because, you know, I'm planning for an interruption. Let's try not to make it last all day.
And so I'll ask this question. Has the state complied with victim notification requirements?
We have.
And in fact, I think quite extensively to my knowledge, because my understanding is that there are perhaps other people on Zoom who are perhaps family members of Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
Donald Mayor.
I believe that an individual identified by the first name of Tanya should be on the phone with an individual identified as Judith. That's a mother, daughter, and they should be in one Zoom. And I believe another person with the first name of Rebecca should be on a different Zoom. Those are the two people or two Zooms that I'm aware of.
Okay, so my clerk has confirmed that that is in fact the case. So I need everybody to know, everybody, you know, on behalf of Mr. Casap and on behalf of the victims in this matter, have a right to be heard in court. And I will accommodate that without any pause or hesitation, all right?
Oh, no.
To the people that are.
That was them,
making
not me.
Statements. You can't talk like you usually would talk, right? You have to pause, you have to go slow, you have to make sure that our interpreter is able to interpret things before you continue. I know people have written statements and they may very well read exactly from those written statements, which is perfectly good and perfectly acceptable. But when people read a written statement, they tend to speed up, which is not only making it difficult for our interpreter, but also making it difficult for our court reporter as well. So I want everybody to know that I'll remind you if there's any difficulty, and I don't mean any disrespect to anybody, but I just want people to know and understand that there may be some interruptions so that we can accommodate our interpreter. Madam Interpreter, if you could raise your right hand to be sworn in, please.
Do you swear that you will interpret truly, accurately, completely, and impartially in accordance with the standards prescribed by law, the Code of Ethics for Court Interpreters, and the Wisconsin Guidelines for Court Interpreting?
I do. Italian interpreter Christina Green. CHRISTINA GREEN.
All right, thank you, Madam Interpreter. Madam Interpreter, are you able to confirm that you have not received that call yet?
I haven't received a call yet.
Okay. The matter was set to commence at 1:30. It's now 1:36. I've found the state's complied with victim notification requirements. Is there any reason why we can't move forward, Ms. Basie?
There's not.
Okay, and again, I know that I try my best to accommodate everybody, but we've known that this matter was set for 1:30 for months and months, right? And months, right? Since January, I think. So at least 2.5 months or so. Ms. Green, if you get that person on the line, please let us know immediately by either saying something or waving at us so we know. And then we'll make sure at that point that we can go into interpreter mode, okay?
Not a problem, Your Honor. I will certainly do so.
I think you will. Thank you, ma'am. All right. So, all right, I think in terms of connecting with everybody that needs to connect, except the person from Italy, we have all our Zoom connections. And again, I found the state's complied with victim notification requirements. I've received and reviewed a number of documents. I've received the defense memorandum, that's document 47. It was filed on March 2nd. I've also received and reviewed other documents that were filed in support of Mr. Casap. Document 48 from the Department of Justice, document 51 from a pastor from a church. Also, I've received and reviewed something from Ms. Earl, E-R-L, a teacher at the jail. And then there are a number of victim impact statements that were received and reviewed by the court. Document 49, document 53, and then another document that was just filed today's date. And I gave you a copy of that, correct, Mr. Raffel?
That's correct, Judge.
Okay, and I've also reviewed the transcript of the plea hearing. And do you have that with you, folks? It's just a thing I need to take care of. On page 17, where I was advised about the charges that were going to be dismissed and read in, it was stated that 3 through 9 would be dismissed and read in. It's actually 3 through 10,
That is correct.
right? So you're moving to dismiss and read and count 10.
Yes.
So ordered, all right?
No objection.
Okay, very good.
Well, we did cover that on this channel too. I have been covering this from the very start because it not only involved a little bit of political stuff and another plot to unalive our president. However, this is my home county. This is the county I was born in. This is the county I graduated from high school in. Like, this is my home. So it was kind of important for me to cover it. I have covered everything that I've been able to get my hands on with this and every hearing. I do have a Casap playlist that I will link in the description of this video if you are interested in seeing any of the other hearings. But all the paperwork. He did make a plea deal. I don't really think his plea deal is worth it in the sense of he's still facing life in prison without parole. Wisconsin doesn't have the death penalty. So that was never on the table for them to take off during a plea deal. So the other charges being dismissed make sense, but don't make sense to me.
Is there anything that I need to do or take up from the state's perspective before we start, Ms.
No, Your
Casey? How many people are going to speak, ma'am?
I believe 2.
Okay, all right. And are they going to speak before or after you present?
Before.
Okay. And then Mr. Raffel?
We have Mr. Casap speaking. We don't have anybody else.
Okay, very good. Anything before we start, sir?
No, Your Honor.
All right, let's hear from the state then, or whomever.
Thank you. Your Honor, the first person I would have come up and provide a statement is Michael, and hopefully I'm not getting his last name wrong, Dibona, D-I-B-O-N-A. Just to give the court a little background, he's a childhood friend of victim A. However, he is providing a statement on behalf of victim A's mom, Judith, and victim A's sister, Tanya, both are who are appearing via Zoom. And that is the letter that he's going to read from that I provide to the court right before the court called the case.
All right, very good. And again, it's Mr.
Before he gets started on his victim impact statement, the international call is the victim's mother, the female victim's mother. Casap unalived his mother and his stepfather. His mother, I believe, was an immigrant from Italy or somewhere else in Europe. So the person that is calling in and needs the interpreter is the female victim's mother.
DeBona, correct?
Correct.
And you heard me talk about not speeding up too much?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Good
And
morning.
again, first state your full name, sir.
Michael DeBona.
Okay, very good.
Your Honor, I stand before you today because two innocent people were deliberately and violently taken from the world. Dawn and Tatiana were not lost to chance, fate, or an accident. They were executed. Their lives were stolen by the conscious, calculated actions of the person sitting in this court today. The defendant did not just kill two people. He destroyed a shared future. He ended years of love, plans, milestones, and memories that were never given the chance to exist. The devastation left behind is total and irreversible. Dawn is my best friend. He was also a son, a brother, a husband, and a source of love, laughter, strength to everyone who knew him. His wife was his partner in life, someone he loved deeply and planned a future with. In a single act of unimaginable violence, the defendant erased not one life, but two, and permanently shattered every family and relationship connected to them. A best friend is not someone you replace. Best friend becomes family. They're woven into your identity, your history, and your understanding of the world. When that person is taken, when they're executed, something fundamental is ripped away forever. That was Dawn to me. Our friendship was built on loyalty, challenge, encouragement. From childhood to adulthood, we pushed each other to be better men. We competed fiercely, we laughed endlessly, we shared experiences about who we become. Like so many people, we believed time was abundant, that there would always be another trip, another game, another conversation. The defendant decided otherwise. As adults, Dawn and I worked together, traveled together, built traditions out of ordinary moments. Even when life pulled us in different directions, he remained the first person I turned to in a moment of joy or pain. When I got married, Dawn stood beside me as my best man, a role earned through a lifetime of trust and brotherhood. And now he is gone. Tatiana is gone. Not because of illness, not because of tragedy beyond human control, because someone made the decision to carry out an execution. The pain left behind cannot be measured. No sentence can restore what was taken. No words can undo the damage. Time may change the shape of grief, but it'll never erase it. This loss will be carried every single day by those who love Dawn and Tatiana for the rest of our lives. Dawn mattered. Tatiana mattered. Their lives had meaning. They made the people around them better simply by being in the world. The pain caused by their death extends far beyond this courtroom and far beyond today. It's permanent, it's devastating, and it was entirely unnecessary. Dawn was my best man. He was my best friend. Tatiana was the love of his life. And because of the defendant's actions, they're both gone forever. Your Honor, I ask that the court fully recognize the gravity of what was done here, and not just the taking of two lives, but the destruction of everything those lives touched. Accountability matters because Dawn and Tatiana mattered. Thank you for allowing me to speak on their behalf and on behalf of all of us who now live with this loss.
Thank you, sir.
Your Honor, we then asked Don Meyer, Mayer, to provide his statement, and he was victim A's brother.
Tell me your name, sir, please.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Robert Kitchell. Donald Mayer was my brother.
Okay, and spell the last name, please.
Kitchell.
All right, thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Your Honor, I thank you for the opportunity to come here today and speak and address the court.
Sir, can you pull the microphone closer, please? Thank you very much.
Your Honor, I have come here today as a representative of my family to share the profound impact that the loss of my brother Don and his wife, Tatiana, has had on our family and their friends. Their lives were intentionally taken in an act of senseless and unforgivable violence. At the time of their murders, our family was already mourning the loss of my father, who had passed away only a couple of months earlier. This additional tragedy has left us overwhelmed with grief. For more than a year, we have struggled to make sense of it. There is no reason that can justify such an ultimate betrayal. My family is forever broken. There will never be another holiday, celebration, or gathering where we are whole again. No family should have to endure this much loss in such a short period of time. I can clearly recall the bitter tears as we stood at my father's gravestone, the earth still fresh from his burial, while we laid Dawn and Tatiana to rest beside him. That moment will stay with me forever. Dawn's mother, Judith, and his sister, Tanya, who live in Massachusetts, struggled deeply with his death. The distance does not lessen the pain. They grieve every day for the son and brother, they lost. Don was a good man. He loved his wife and his stepson, Nikita. He provided a beautiful home in a safe neighborhood with excellent schools. He took them on vacations to exciting places. He spent time teaching Nikita how to play basketball. Recently, he cashed out part of his inheritance to buy Nikita a brand new piano, hoping to foster a love of music. That is the kind of father and provider he was. Tatiana was a devoted mother who deeply loved her only son. She brought him from war-torn Moldova to the United States so he could grow up in a safe home with a loving family. She was pursuing a business degree at Carroll University and working hard towards her future. Her diploma and graduation gown arrived in the mail after her death. They were found unopened in her home. Those items will now be sent to her mother, Lydia, who is also devastated by the loss of her only child. She has no family left. The manner in which Dawn and Tatiana were killed is something no family should ever have to endure. Dawn was shot in the back of the head. Tatiana was ambushed as she walked through her own front door. Afterward, their bodies remained in their home for 12 days. On February 20th, surveillance footage shows Nikita taking pictures of Dawn's body and speaking about it in a way that shows a chilling lack of remorse.
Yeah, for those of you that are not familiar with this case, who might be tuning in and have not followed me through it all, he left the bodies there for 2 weeks, and then stole his stepdad's car to drive out of state and used his credit cards, I believe, in a different state. I think Kansas is where he was ultimately found. So it's it's a lot. This might be a trigger warning for some people. It is very violent unalivings, very violent, and also if any of the victim impact statements bring up the Order of Nine Angels or anything, that is an online, for lack of a better word, cult. We've actually done some streams on Order of Nine Angels and 764 and how they bully and blackmail people.
Mommy, it's huge.
So
Mommy,
it is.
it's huge.
Yep, it's a big thing. So this one, if this isn't for y'all and it gets a little too emotional, I will see you guys on the next one.
These actions have compounded our grief beyond words. They demonstrate a level of detachment and cruelty that is deeply disturbing. I ask the court today to consider not only the lives that were taken, but the ongoing devastation left behind to our family, to Tatiana's mother, and to everyone who loved them. I believe a person capable of such betrayal and violence poses a continued danger to others. For the safety of the community and in honor of Dawn and Tatiana's lives, I ask that he be sentenced to spend the rest of his life in prison without any possibility of release.
Thank you.
And I'm really glad that they're not sharing these people's faces
And as I just said,
more than they
apologize
have to.
to Mr. Kitchell, when I introduced him as obviously the deceased, I apologize to him for that misunderstanding or that error. Obviously, the court notes the factors that we have to consider, the court has to consider, which is character of the defendant, protection of the community, and the seriousness of the offense. I did want to address 2 of the documents that were filed by the defense in this case. And Your Honor, I'm assuming you'll let me know if you get a sign that the interpreter is now interpreting, because I'll probably talk more at a regular speed.
I know, I very much want you to do that. It's now hang on. No, the interpreter's on mute now, and
Okay.
she knows, and as I said, I trust that she will let us know if she gets a call. And I'm just gonna do this. It's 1:51. Madam Interpreter, you don't have any call yet from Italy, do you, ma'am?
No, I do not.
Okay, all right, and again, we were set to start at 1:30, 1:51. Please
Understood.
continue, ma'am. Thank you, Madam Interpreter, again.
So with regard to the defense memorandum, it really talks about what the writer perceives is the impact that the defendant's use of the computer and the websites that he was looking at had, how that impacted his crime. And during my sentencing remarks, it really does feel like even during the defendant's statements to the federal authorities, he was given a proffer, which is referred to in the letter from the U.S. Department of Justice, is that he really became more radicalized in December of 2024. Now, as I looked at the download of the defendant's phone, at his Google searches, things like that, he really started looking at these really disturbing websites and making contact with the person that he referred to as ASEL. Actually, that's a shortened name. I'm not going to do the full name because it has some profanity within it, but ASELL, and later Angel, ANGEL. That was really that contact, which really, that was the basis of the Department of Justice meeting with him and him being given the proffer, is because they were interested in, I think they thought he was brought in to possibly kill the president of the United States. And I am going to go through
And
that
there it
with
is.
you because I do believe that it's important. They didn't bring that plan to this defendant. This defendant brought that plan to them. And I think that's an important distinction. So when you say that he was kind of talked into this, he is the one who came up with the plan, and then he was looking at ways and how he could execute that plan. So I think that that is important to realize. I did read the letter from Ms. Earl, ERL. It's not surprising that she indicates that he completes high quality work at a high level. I think that's something that we heard about from his school when we looked into those documents, is that he was a very good student. The Mount Calvary Lutheran, I think, is a little concerning to me because I don't know that he just found God after this. I would note that one of the items he took with him from the house was a Bible. So it seems like if that was an important memento to him, which I'm assuming it was, he brought family pictures with him and he brought a Bible, that this isn't something that's new that he just discovered. I think he had that base understanding, and in spite of that, he continued to engage in very horrific conduct. The defendant was 17 years of age at the time that this occurred. To give the court a little background, I know that it said in the letter of the defense memorandum that he had been searching some concerning websites, but certainly after December of 2024, or 24 is when he indicated an uptick in those searches and in his research. I would note that he stated it started as early as 2020. I can inform the court that a federal agency visited his home in around December of.
And that right there would be a visit from the FBI in, I believe, November of 2023.
2023, and indicated to his parents that he was looking at some very concerning content. As a result of that, his mother and stepfather, he could no longer utilize the computer unless it was for school-related things. I think there was more monitoring of that, and certainly it did appear, and I think it's even mentioned in defense memorandum, that he appeared frightened and was afraid to do that. So it's something that he had at least some knowledge that this activity was concerning. It could be criminal. And yet in December of 2024 and possibly earlier, he had been accessing it.
This brings up another point and question and rabbit hole that my brain dives down. Yet another example of the FBI knowing something and not doing anything about it, and then something horrific happens. And second, what about all of this? He was allowed to use technology for school. However, do you miss the days when we didn't have technology in school and kids actually learned out of a book and didn't have access to the internet 24/7? Was political extremism and things like this harder to come by because you had to do the legwork the old-fashioned way? Two different rabbit holes that my brain instantly tries to hop down when hearing her talk. And third, okay, this has nothing to do with Nikita Casap, but yet another prosecutor that has a really, really bad hair day. Why? You're government employees. You can afford, a straightener and some hairspray. Just saying. That's my petty side. Sorry, y'all.
I'm not going to go through, I actually, in dictating this complaint, I put a lot of details in it, and I did that for two reasons. Hopefully it gives the community the information that they were wondering about with regard to this. I think it gives the court a good background about what happened, so I'm not going on at length about the facts of the case. However, I think generally what we know based upon those facts is that the defendant killed his stepfather victim A, and both of the deaths occurred on February 11th, 2025. I'm sorry, yes. And he did this by shooting victim A once execution style in the back of the head. We were able to recover the projectile that was fired from victim A's gun that the defendant took from the home. After victim A was dead and he was killed in his den while he was working in his office at his desk, he was then waiting for his mom to come back from school. He referred to it in one of the documents that I read in preparing for the sentencing that she usually got home around 8:30, and based upon the traffic cameras or the cameras within the subdivision, we know that that's about the time that she came home. She walked through the service door of the garage. She still had her coat on. It looked like she may have been carrying some items, and he then shot her 3 times, killing her. He then, as victim A's brother indicated, he then covered them both and kind of stayed in the house. And when I say stayed in the house, he stayed at the house at night. He covered them in blankets. Of the 2 victims, he only put candles by victim A's body. He did not put any candles that we could observe in the evidence. I did go to the scene. There were no candles around victim B's body, but I did around victim A's body. And I can.
What kind of ritualistic crap to put candles around the victim's body? And also, like, obviously I've never been in a situation like this because I'm not behind bars. However, I cannot imagine unaliving something and then living in a house with it for 2 weeks. Smelly, gross. My conscience would eat me alive. The camera from this camera is not a pool feed or anything like this. This is local news, and I kind of like it because they're not showing people's faces. It's one camera shot from behind. No pun intended. Oh, that was bad. But I kind of appreciate them not showing people's faces and just having this one pool feed, because this is a very emotional, no matter if you're lock him up for life or I'm innocent and I really didn't do this, I just pled guilty for the hell of it. This is a very emotional thing. So I can appreciate having cameras there, but not being directly with a camera in your face. So candles to try to hide the decomposition smell, maybe. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder if I do or not, but then other times I'm like, I can't. Yeah. You get me on the right topic, Gail, and I don't think I have a conscience, but that's just me. You know, like you talk about my daughter and stuff like that, and my conscience goes somewhere deep down inside where I can't find it. Yeah, it's too soft to say. You can't imagine the atmosphere. I mean, I just, nope.
Tell the court, I'm assuming the candles were for the smell. And then he continued living at the residence with his mom and his stepfather's bodies in exactly where they were shot and killed. However, he did leave the house during these times. He didn't go to school. I would note that they were killed on February 11th. On February 12th, that morning, a little after 8:30, he turned in a homework assignment that he had, which was an essay. And then he also contacted the school indicating that he would be out of class because he was ill. They responded back that his parents needed to vouch for him, and they never heard back from the parents, obviously. We know that during that time, he left the house. He shopped for food, gas. He went to restaurants, just not through the drive-through. He actually went into the restaurant. He sat down. He ate his meal and then left. We have knowledge he went to Lapa Peak based upon his location data. At one point, he went to Best Buy, and that would have been on February 16th. And why I mentioned some of this is it really goes to the planning that the defendant knew exactly what he was doing. And in this case, he went to the Best Buy to buy a backup battery charger on February 16th so that he would have power for his electronics after he left the house for good. The last time the defendant was at the house was on February 24th, 2025. So he did stay with the bodies in that house for almost 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
But before leaving, he totally ransacked the house. And when the police told me that he had ransacked the house or the house was ransacked, they thought, based upon how it looked, that possibly the defendant's life was in danger, that possibly they went there, they killed the parents, and that they took the defendant. When I went there, it was totally ransacked. Every closet was emptied. Pictures were taken off the wall. He was clearly looking for places that money could have been secreted, a lockbox perhaps. He ended up taking a lockbox. It was found in the car that he was driving when he was arrested. It was pried open. He obviously was looking for items of value. It was clear while they were searching the house that in the kitchen, in a very secret location, there was a bank envelope that had $500 in cash. And I think that that must have been common. We found empty bank envelopes in the kitchen that the defendant clearly found and took the money. He took both victims' credit cards and debit cards. He took all the jewelry of any value. I know in the criminal complaint it mentions a number over 14,000. That was only the values that we could get for some of the jewelry. So it was a much higher amount. They removed all of those items. He took other cash, as I indicated. He took electronics from the home. I think that those are detailed within the criminal complaint. What's interesting was whenever the defendant left the residence, he didn't have his mom's phone with him. She very rarely had any calls. As a matter of fact, I think the only calls she got after she was killed were calls from his school, obviously trying to find out where he was. But he took the phone and he took it with him, his stepfather's phone, during this time between February 11th. Actually, he kept it the whole time. And the purpose of that was really to make sure that people thought everything was okay. He spoke via text. When I say the victim A communicated, it was actually the defendant communicated. He would put the message on his phone, he would transfer it to victim A's phone and then send it to the people. And that included his employer, his mother, his sister. So again, the steps that he took to make it look, by all appearances, like everything was fine in this household, when in fact, the two primary occupants of that household, the adults, were dead.
That's cold. That's cold and calculated.
As they got to the residence on February 28th, the police did. Victim A's mom did call, as did the school, because victim A's mom also called the school looking for this defendant. And so they go to the residence for a welfare check. I know that those details are within the complaint. They find victim A and victim B's body in a severe state of decomposition. They discover that victim A's vehicle is gone, so they put an attempt to locate on the vehicle, saying it's a stolen vehicle. They entered that. They start pinging the defendant's phone. And I want to say at about 11 o'clock, we found out that the vehicle was stopped and he was taken into custody in another state. They recovered the vehicle that the defendant was in, what we found out, and that was at about 11:25 in Kansas, over $14,000 in cash. And that's pretty relevant because when he gave his truthful, and I put that in quotation marks, statement to the feds, he indicated that he left with 8,000 and only had 200 left. That was a lie. He had the defendant's gun on the front passenger seat floorboard. He had a box of ammo that matched, that was used for this gun. It's noteworthy that 4 cartridges were missing. And what he had also done is he had collected the casings and put them in that box, again, trying to hide his some of the evidence. The jewelry, he had the credit cards of both victim A and victim B. What's also interesting is he had a surveillance camera within the car. And the relevance of that surveillance camera is there were surveillance cameras for 7 areas of the house. However, 6 of them had been offline prior to this incident happening. The only one that was online was actually the one that was in the car the defendant was driving, which was victim A's car. It had an SD card, and when they looked at that, they found some concerning content, which I think victim A's brother kind of spoke about. There are 4 different electronics taken from the home that were in the car. Like I said, the Bible that was taken, and his mother's birth certificates and passports. During the video that was taken, in this video, the camera was located, we know this from looking at the clips, was located in the office, victim A's office. We can see the defendant entering the office on a regular basis to light candles, and then he'd come back at night and blow them out. You can see him adjusting the camera, though, surprisingly or interestingly, it was always pointed at victim A's body.
Once again, another weird thing. If he was lighting them for the smell, he would have left them lit. But he lit them every morning and put them out every night, almost like lighting a candle in a Catholic church. Creepy and ritualistic. And I just don't know where that came from. And I really would like to see more documents. And honestly, I would like to see him charged federally because they will provide more details in those documents.
He's seen rummaging through victim A's desk drawers. At one point, he's observed removing the laptop that was on the desk in that den, and he then immediately replaces it with other items to make it look like a laptop was not taken. I thought that was interesting. The clip that I think was described by victim A's brother wasn't a picture, it was actually a video, and it was taken 9 days after victim A was killed, and it shows the defendant standing near victim A's body. It appears that he's got a phone in one hand as if he's taking a picture of victim A. And he could be heard saying, and these are his quotes, "I don't do it to hurt the family. I do it to show the lack of any amount of care or decency of this defendant." And these are quotes. So you can see him there, period. I can literally see the fucking rotten body there. Those were the defendant's words.
Gross. And it's real ritualistic, but I'm also the cameras inside the house with the surveillance. This is probably something that's in the police maybe the feds documents, but I'm wondering if those were connected to the internet and if he gave the link to view those cameras to the people that were quote unquote helping him overseas. There was a bunch of usernames that we got into when we read the federal search warrant. However, it just makes me think that he was doing it to like show proof of death. He may be more psycho than me. Possibly. I'm just thinking he's a little and I don't even think he's a psychopath because I don't think he's a psychopath because I just think that psychopaths just don't care about life is just numbers to them. But this person like was emotional. I don't effing care. Here, there's the rotten body or whatever he said. Gross. It just screams to me this cold, calculated, and how much further would he go and how much more information does he have that the feds want? That's what I'm curious about. This is my rabbit hole. So I'm like super hoping that he gets federal charges. Not because I think he deserves them, because you have a life sentence. Obviously, you're not getting out. However, I want more information, and that is how I get it, because those documents would be on Pacer. What happened is that he turned into this demonic being.
Obviously, this was 9 days after he killed victim A, and there was absolutely, completely no remorse. We also know, and this was the subject of count 10, which was dismissed and read in, is that this person who was identified in the complaint as witness A, she indicates that she and the defendant were friends. During the friendship, he started talking about governmental issues, and at some point he starts to say that he is going to kill himself. He goes on to say that he's going to kill his parents, and he's going to do it by shooting them. And then he seemed to back off when she like, what? That's you.
Once again, why didn't anybody take this seriously? You have people saying that he said he was going to unalive his parents. And when people show you who they are, believe them. When people say they're going to do stuff, believe them. There was multiple opportunities for this to be prevented by that witness A or that friend reporting him. The FBI doing something with whatever material they found on his computer. There's enough laws in this country where everybody breaks the law at least once a day, whether it be speeding or anything else. I'm sure they could have found something and they chose not to. And it's just, could this have been prevented? And how do we fix it?
Need help. Saying, no, I was joking. I don't have access to a gun. He then, after discussing his thoughts of suicide and killing his parents, he then informs her, after pretty much she had stopped communicating with him, that if anyone found out what he told her, that something bad was going to happen, and basically it would not end well for her. So again, this was probably the end of December, beginning of January, so more than a month before the defendant killed his parents. Other discussions that she had with the defendant included him telling her that his home life was happy. It was a perfect home life, that he described his childhood as happy, and certainly nothing other than his statements about killing himself and his parents really made her think that there was anything materially wrong, although there were some videos he shared with her that were a little concerning in terms of their content. What we know in looking at the defendant's iPad that was recovered in the car that he was driving is that he had over 200 web visits of interest, all involving serial killers. This included his search for a list of youngest serial killers, famous serial killers, unknown serial killers. I believe at the time that he was arrested in Kansas, he was on his way to California, and there was a search for a California serial killer gang. So again, very concerning searches, which again, this would have there was no dates associated with these. but based upon where they were located, it did appear that those were not done during the February 11th to February 28th timeframe. We then have an analysis of his cell phone. I'm just going to refer to a couple things. His activity while he was, after he had left his residence on February 24th for the last time. And again, I think it goes to his planning, he knew what he was doing and he was trying to hide his tracks. Some of his searches on his cell phone included how long are Snapchat messages stored, Antioch high school shooting, Nashville school shooting, list of mass shootings in the United States in 2025, Abundant Life Christian school shooting, and they start talking about questions that he had regarding the use of his parents' credit cards. How come in some places you need a PIN for a card, but others you don't?
Okay, devil's advocate, not that I'm defending him at all, because you'll see the reaction when Baby Squid sees his face, because when I was working on this thumbnail, she almost knocked my computer monitor off the desk. However, someone's search history, especially with the rabbit holes I fall down, my YouTube and FBI overlords who are watching, my search history is not that bad, I promise.
And that's when he first started looking at Waukesha alerts to see, presumably, whether or not there is any nudes with regard to victim A and victim B's bodies found. And that was on February 26th. On February 27th, he's doing web searches for, is it okay to sleep in a car in winter? Is it okay to run the car at night? This is a case in which the defendant did not have a driver's license, and per his own statement, he had never driven before. He was doing Google searches prior to him leaving the residence as to how, what do you do to make the car go? Which pedal is the gas pedal? Which pedal is the brake pedal? So he was doing some of those. But then he starts saying, search was, does cops in Wyoming have automatic plate readers? Can you get pulled over for a license plate that expires that month? And then on February 28th, again, he looks at Waukesha alerts. And then obviously he starts gaining some information that something is going down in the village of Waukesha where his house was located. And he starts looking for Waukesha investigation and then finds a media blurb from a local station talking about a resident was found dead during a welfare check. And then he starts looking at mass killers and how to delete my Telegram account. And Telegram is the search engine, and I'm sure I'm saying that wrong, but that's how he was communicating with his ACEL and Angel. So again, as soon as the bodies are found, he's trying to figure out exactly how he can minimize his involvement in that. And I've just been told the victim may now, victim B's mother may be on Zoom. Or on the phone with the interpreter, I'm sorry.
We'll check with our interpreter.
Okay.
Madam
Your Honor,
Interpreter.
this is the interpreter speaking. No, the victim's B mother is not.
Okay,
on
it's
the phone.
victim's
I'm
B,
sorry.
it's his
Sorry, that was
mother,
information we received
male
from
victim's mother.
someone from our office.
All right.
Sorry.
Thank you.
And then in looking at
I get
one of the detectives.
I know the details of this case, but for the life of me, I can't remember when they refer to victim A and victim B who they're talking about. I believe victim A was the male because that was the first person he unalived. And then he ambushed his mother later, so she's victim B. For the life of me, I get that confused almost every time I try to talk about it with someone. Forgive me, the brain fog is real. I can remember what state he was caught in and the dates and times of the issues, but I can't remember the difference between A and B. And hey, Malin, good to see you. Trigger warning on this case. Well, you've been with me through this case before, so you know what you're getting yourself into.
To review the recording of the interview with the defendant by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. And what we know is through that, the defendant told the federal agencies that it was only once he came up with a plan to attack a politician using a drone that he searched Telegram looking for like-minded people who could provide him advice on how best to carry out this attack, and began communicating with an individual who's identified in the reports as ASEL, again, ASELL. He indicated during his interview with the feds that while he was waiting on further instructions how to carry out this plan, he ended up doing what he referred to as the Tuesday thing. Sometimes he said it as a Tuesday thing, sometimes he referred to it as the 11th, both of which are the 11th corresponds with the date that both victim A and victim B were killed by the defendant, which happened to fall on a Tuesday. And then he says while waiting on further instructions on how to carry out his plan, he ended up doing the Tuesday thing ahead of time. So I don't know what exactly, if he was meant to wait to kill his parents, but again, he was giving this information to federal authorities. It was only then that he began communicating with the second subject, Angel, whose Angel's part in this was to arrange to get him a drone and explosives, and later on a license plate when it became concerning that maybe his plate would be red in a different state and they may be looking for it. Angel was the person that he was sending Bitcoin out of victim A's account to buy these items. And as I looked at our reports, it looked like he sent over $8,700 in Bitcoin to Angel in order to buy the license plate, the drone, as well as the explosives. In looking at the Google data from the defendant's phone, the defendant talks about the defendant actually was telling ACEL that he's going to steal his dad's gun. Again, it shows to his planning. Never at any time is any of these people saying you need to kill your parents. It appears that that was the defendant's plan. I don't know how it worked into attacking a politician, but for him, he believed that he needed to kill his parents before he left the residence. And again, it was the defendant who brought that up. So then we have the proffer from the federal authorities. Obviously, once we start looking through the phone, the Washington County Sheriff's Department, who did an awesome job investigating this case, they didn't leave any document, device unturned. They did a full and thorough investigation, but it became apparent that possibly there were greater implications when we started hearing that the defendant was going to kill a politician. He later determined that the best politician to kill was President Trump. So they, in exchange for his truthful statement, they agreed not to use any of the information furnished directly against the defendant in any federal or criminal proceeding, civil or criminal proceeding. And the AUSA that was handling this case did author the letter dated March 17, 2000. Sorry.
There we have our answer.
Apparently it was, that was the proper letter, I apologize, but then authored the letter that was submitted to the court.
And this is the hard part about Wisconsin, is because you have access to the case, but you don't have access to the documents unless you go into the courthouse. And as much as I wanted to have somebody go, I did not have anybody go to the courthouse for me to get the documents. So Wisconsin cases are hard like that. You can see the charges, but you can't see the documents. So we would have known that there probably wasn't going to be any federal charges if we would have had access to the documents. One of the many reasons that I like being able to look through documents is because you have more information than ever gets reported in the media or gets talked about in a hearing.
But I can tell the court, because it sounded like there may have been some information provided. I confirmed with the AUSA that no arrests were made, no one was charged. And frankly, as I go through the interview he had with the FBI, he provided some information that he was given these coordinates to pick up this license plate. It ended up the coordinates were to a U.S. Army National Guard base. There was no place to pick up a license plate. The drone that was supposed to be picked up in California, again, he paid over $5,000 for that in Bitcoin. Again, there's no evidence that anything was ever discovered as a result of the defendant's proffer. My belief is that the defendant puts out this information. Hey, I've got this plan. I need a drone. I'm going to kill a political figure. And people looked at that and took advantage and tried to see if he was serious and if he would provide money. And the defendant walked right into it. He did provide them money, and it was all a scam. But it was at the defendant's impetus that those conversations were even had.
Yeah, you physically have to go in there
So I
and
looked
access
at
them.
the full report from the FBI. Again, they indicate that he stated he did not have a difficult time adjusting to life in the United States. And again, I think what we heard from victim A's brother is that the defendant was given many opportunities that other people would not have. He came from Moldova, which was a war-torn country, a very dangerous country. He came to the United States, was provided a beautiful house, an education, and really anything he wanted. He indicated to the feds that the changing point in his mindset came when he learned about the December 20th, 2024 attack at a Christmas market in Germany. And he stated that he was upset that a young Swedish girl was killed during the attack. And he then got the idea himself, and these are his words, to conduct an attack on a politician, and thought the best way to do so would be to use a drone like he saw in videos from the war in Ukraine.
He wanted to start World War
The defendant
III.
was asked if he would have been deterred by the fact if President Trump would have been surrounded by a large crowd when it came time to conduct the attack, resulting in civilian casualties. The defendant responded that that would not have stopped him from moving forward.
Now that is
again, once he got the idea to conduct the attack, it was he who went to Telegram to try to learn more information on how he could do it. He said that he was asked in the main chat room of the channel that he was talking to the feds about, like what information he got, and he said his initial plan was to conduct an attack, was to rig an AK-47 to a drone, and that he would then shoot President Trump. He then stated, I realized that that plan was silly. And And he started thinking about rigging a drone to drop an explosive device instead. And that's when he started to communicate with Asa. He said that the plan for the attack was at some point Asa was going to give him the coordinates to a safe house, and it was the defendant's belief that the drone and the explosives needed for the attack would be waiting for him at the safe house when he got there. He believed the safe house was in a city in California, and he further stated that initially when he paid the money, he thought he was just paying for the drone. He was then told that the explosives would be extra, so he used his dad's or his stepfather's account and paid additional money. He said once.
Yet, this is another reason why I think you need to monitor children's, and yes, under 18, you're still a child. You need to monitor children's internet activity very, very closely. And when I say extremely closely, your brain's not developed till 25 years old. If his brain was fully developed, some of these wacky ideas might have seemed less realistic, and he wouldn't have been as easy to manipulate. Yes, he went to the people in the chat rooms and on Telegram with these ideas. However, they were able to, based on what I saw in the federal warrant, they were able to manipulate his thinking, making him believe that this was actually going to work. Any rational person knows that some of these ideas that he had were just absolutely ridiculous. Who do you think got to him? He was in chat rooms with people. She keeps referring to an angel or person named Angel. There's a online cult referred to as Order of Nine Angels, ONA. He was talking to people in regards to them, and that's what led me down the 764 rabbit hole. This whole case has been a giant rabbit hole of what the actual, he brought it to them, but at 17 years old, you're easily manipulated. So he might have had these ideas, but when he brought it to people, he paid money for explosives and things that he never received. You've heard of ONA? Yeah, this at the time of the crime, he was 17. Ruined his life.
He used the drone to drop the explosive. He was going to head back to a safe house until mid-March, and he would then get picked up by a ship and sail to Ukraine. There's a lot of discussion about him going to Ukraine. Would it be safe for him to be in Ukraine? Are people going to look for him in Ukraine? And he decided he was going to go there for 8 to 10 years. And the safe house was in Eureka, California. And he received that information, the coordinates, on February 24th, and that's why he left his residence on that date. The amount of money that he said he was paying for the new license plate was different than the amount of money sent, somewhat of an inconsistency in the defendant's statement. And further stated in the interview that Asal often delayed large portions of their chat. He said he wanted to preserve their conversation in case he was ever stopped by law enforcement, so he could show who else was involved in his plot. He took screenshots, screen recordings of their conversations. He did give information about the sites that he was going on. And again, his not being credible when he says, I don't know if he thought the police weren't going to find the $14,000 in the car, but he minimized what he had left. He said he had $200 left. He did go into at length during this interview the efforts that he took to make sure that Asa wasn't scamming him. He was, and again, I'm not a tech person, but he was looking at different things that Asa was sending, confirming that it looked like this was actually a real person, and that's why he felt good about going forward. He also believed it was going to be easier to assassinate politicians than people realized after he saw how close President Trump came to being shot at the rally the prior summer. And he believed that that showed some level of incompetence, and therefore he believed it would be easier for him to do it, knowing that
even a broken clock is right twice a day. Seeing the incompetence in Butler, Pennsylvania, even a broken clock is right twice a day. You can hate somebody and still think they have a point. Secret Service was incompetent.
It had been close before. And again, this interview goes on, and again, was it helpful? I guess it helped the federal government to look to see if these sites, if there was an actual threat to presidential surveillance. But as indicated before, as a result of my look at all these reports, I don't believe that there was a credible threat by anyone other than the defendant, but I don't know that he would have, there was no possibility he was gonna get a drone or any weaponization. I know at one point he was talking about a drone which would be equipped with
I will be back.
and nails and things that could cause injury to people around. So again, this goes to show his planning. I think that's really important in this. This isn't a kid who just went off one night, who was mad at his parents. This was a kid who had it all. He had a loving home, he had good schooling, he had support. He went on vacations with his family. And do I believe that some of his researching of the internet caused him to start having strange ideas? I do. But it wasn't the internet that told him to come up with this plan. It was not the internet or Acel or Angel who told him that he should kill his parents. That was this defendant's decision. So as I started off and I said, what does the court consider? Character of the defendant. I think I talked about the character of the defendant, or the lack thereof. He had what most kids would dream of, and instead of appreciating it, he ended up killing his mom and the person who had become a father figure to him, and ended up taking what was in the house that had any value and continue on with his journey to possibly kill a political figure. His searches for serial killers, it's concerning. I don't know what else he was planning on doing, what his other future actions would be, but certainly those searches are concerning. The protection of the community. I think, again, that goes to all the information I just provided to the court. How can we best serve or protect the community? It's interesting, after I went out of court after the plea hearing, someone said, well, what about the eligibility of extended supervision, and that he could be rehabilitated back in the community? And my response after reading all these reports, I'm not willing to take the chance. Frankly,
Would you think this person is capable of being rehabilitated? My guess is no. Just a thought. My guess is no.
this defendant's searches, his beliefs, I think somewhat his manipulation that he's now found God. He always had God. He just ignored God and engaged in this conduct regardless. He took a Bible with him. And then the seriousness of the crime. This is possibility, 2 counts, first-degree intentional homicide of life in prison without the possibility of extended supervision. If the court indicates that extended supervision may be appropriate after a certain period of time, it has to be a minimum of 20 years. So the recommendation was both sides free to argue. And I was up front with Attorney Ripple when I talked to him. I said, this is a case I'm going to ask for the maximum penalty with no possibility of extended supervision. I felt it was only fair, although we were saying both sides free to argue, that's what I'm going to ask for, and that's what I'm asking for today. There is no circumstance that I believe that this defendant should be out in our community. I believe the risk is too great. What he did showed a total disregard for human life in terms of him shooting his father-like figure, his stepfather, execution style, 1 bullet in the back of the head. And I really liked victim A's brother's characterization of an ambush of his mom. The person who raised him, who brought him to this country for his benefit, to make a better life for him, he shoots her 3 times and leaves both of their bodies just in the house to rot. This shows an individual who does not deserve to ever be back in the community. So I'm asking the court to do the maximum penalty, life without the possibility of extended supervision, on each count consecutive to one another. As conditions, he's to have no contact with victim A's family. There's $350 due to the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department for the toll bill to bring victim A's vehicle back from Kansas City, and any costs and assessments of the court deem appropriate.
Anything else, ma'am?
No, Attorney Schultz just asked me about extradition costs. This is something that the Sheriff's Department did go out. They decided not to have us pay for extradition costs. They went out and they personally brought the defendant back.
Okay, give me 1 second.
It brought to my attention that there may be someone else. I know that the sister-in-law did provide a victim impact statement, and she is on Zoom, that she also may wish to provide a statement, and she'd be identified as Rebecca. Is that correct, Madam Clerk?
She requested to make a comment.
All right, we can bring her in. Okay, she has to appear by video. as
Yes,
well.
yes.
Right.
We'll see how this goes. Courtroom and Zoom sometimes works, sometimes doesn't.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Can you tell me, do you wish to make a comment, ma'am?
No, I just wanted to provide a letter to you. I didn't
Hang
want
on
to
a
read it.
second. Tell me your name, please.
Rebecca West.
And what did you want to tell me?
No, I didn't want to say anything. I wrote a letter. I just wanted you to read the letter that I submitted.
I read everything that's submitted, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anything else, Ms. Basie?
No, I did say that letter was sent via CCAP, and I know that this court always reads the letters prior to sentencing, and actually you mentioned prior to, or
CCAP is Wisconsin's Circuit Court Access Program. I used it quite frequently when I was working at the hospital.
shortly after starting this hearing, that you had read that particular letter.
Okay, so,
That is the sister of victim A, so the male defendant's sister. And I honestly, she submitted a letter. I don't know if I'd want to read that in open court either. Unfortunately, despite there being no parole, we've seen judges and parole panels let these people out. Reagan would be Assassin Hinckley, for example. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure this judge seems like a very F around and find out kind of judge. So probably not. The judge already read it since it was submitted via CCAP.
Madam Interpreter, if you could come on again, please. Thank you. You still have not received any call, correct, ma'am?
I haven't,
All
Your
right.
Honor.
And we've contracted with you and are paying you good money to be here and not do anything. And any objection if I release her, Ms. Basie? She's contracted to be here till
Yes.
3 o'clock, correct, ma'am?
No, I'm contracted for the entire afternoon, as a matter of fact.
All right, if you could just stick around then, just in case.
Not a problem,
Thank
absolutely.
you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Judge looked annoyed with that.
Mr. Raffel.
So before they get started on the next set of speakers or anything, what is CCAP? CCAP is Wisconsin's Circuit Court Access Program. It's a website where you can go and you can see all the what people have been charged with, what people have been found guilty of. It's things like that, but you cannot get documents on there, unfortunately.
Thank you, Judge. Your Honor, our global recommendation for both counts is for the court to impose, obviously, the mandatory life with the possibility of extended supervision in 20 years. The question before the court this afternoon is not whether to release Nikita Casap or even to set a date on which he would be released. The question is for the court to determine when it might be appropriate for
Never.
professionals to begin considering when to consider extended supervision for this young man, placing him on extended supervision.
Never.
In giving proper consideration to the galleon factors, the nature of the offense, the character of the defendant, the need to protect the public, this court can and should give strong consideration to the following reality. In February of 2025, when Nikita Casap committed these terrible crimes, he was a child. He was a child for the purpose of protecting children and prosecuting crimes against children. He was a child within the confines of Chapter 948055, which makes it a crime to cause children to view or listen to certain activity. He was a child for the purpose of prosecuting child enticement. He was a child within the confines of the Children's Code, which serves to protect and serve children both from others and themselves.
This is where I'm going to get petty because yes, protecting children is one thing. But he admitted to unaliving both of his parents. Protecting children at that point, what about protecting his parents? What about protecting the public from someone who murdered their parents? I just have issues. And I understand that defense attorneys have to do a job. But when your client has already admitted to killing people, save me this child protection shit. No, child protection is to save a child like this who has done nothing wrong. Minus, normal toddler stuff.
We're all aware of the principal exception to that legal status as a child for a 17-year-old, because both for crimes of this nature, for first-degree intentional, and for 17-year-olds in the state of Wisconsin, original adult court jurisdiction begins at the age of 17. So although on the date of the offense, Nikita Casap was a child, he was not a juvenile. Although he was a child, his legal proceedings begin and they end here. His legal status changed the day he turned 17 in Wisconsin, but none of the policy considerations or our basic moral common sense understandings of children and childhood, the understandings that dictate the need for all of those protections that I just referenced, none of those understandings about children went anywhere. On the day that he committed these crimes, had Nikita Casap tried to enlist in the military or enter into a contract, had he tried to vote in an election, or so much as buy a lottery ticket, the people in charge would have all given likely the same repudiation, get out of here, you're just a kid.
Okay, I have some things to discuss. First thing, Gail, I want to, as long as I've known you, I did not know or remember if you had told me. I think that's something that I would remember, but I am so sorry. Now I understand why you feel certain ways about certain things. I'm so sorry. Absolutely so sorry. As you've seen in some of my discussions with another parent of a murdered child, you I cannot put myself in those shoes. I can empathize, but I can sympathize, but it's I'm so sorry. And secondly, on a pettier note and something to make me maybe make Gail laugh, he talks about Wisconsin like, oh, at 17, he's an adult in the eyes of the law. At age 12, I could legally go to the bar with my parents and have a drink, not sip out of their drink, but them order a completely different alcoholic beverage for me. As long as I was with a parent or guardian and I was over 12 years old. So he needs to spare me on this. Well, he wouldn't have been able to buy a lottery ticket. He can go to a bar and legally drink as long as he was with one of his parents. I've been intoxicated in a bar before the age of 18 with my parents. Wisconsin laws are weird. So when he talks about, well, they would have said you're just a kid. Spare me on this he's just a kid thing. I'm so good. No, you shouldn't have. No. No, Gail, this is your safe space because anybody messes with you and they have to mess with me. So even though I'm not a huge believer in safe spaces, anybody fucks with my mods and they fuck with me. Ergo, this is your safe space. So normal teenager life in Europe, yeah, but in most states, especially the southern states, that's weird. But if you look at a map of most drunk counties in the United States, Wisconsin has all of them. So
Why do those protections exist? Why do we restrain and protect children, both for their own benefit and for the benefit of others? They exist because we know that children have three primary attributes that distinguish them from adults and the moral culpability that follows adult behavior. We know that children tend to be much more impulsive, that they're much more likely to go along with ideas with an underdeveloped sense of responsibility and accountability and projection into the future. We know that they're more vulnerable to outside influences and pressures, and sometimes much less capable of extricating themselves from the negative outside influences and pressures acting upon them. We know that.
Is he contradicting himself, or is that just me? Because he's on one hand talking about how in the eyes of the law he's an adult, but he's a child. But children are not developed enough to know right from wrong and this and that. I'm sorry, like anybody over the age of maybe 6 knows that taking another person's life and can verbalize taking another person's life is not a good idea. I can see not knowing right from wrong as far as like social rules and things like that, but knowing that you shouldn't unalive somebody else, especially the people who brought you into this world, any child with a half-developed brain knows that that's not accurate.
But their character is not as well formed or developed as those of an adult, and that actions which would show depravity of mind in an adult are much less likely to show depravity of mind in the mind of a child. Immaturity, impulsivity, prone to negative influences. Character is still developing. These were the factors that have been discussed in a slew of Supreme Court cases that have been passed over the last 20 years. The landmark case in 2012, Miller v. Alabama, which held that it was a violation of the 8th Amendment's prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment for a statute to carry with it a mandatory sentence of life without the possibility of parole for those who have committed their offenses before the age of 18. For all of the factors that we just talked about, those three primary distinguishing factors between children and adults, the court held and continues to hold that children are constitutionally different from adults. I don't want to be misleading with that authority. This court still has the discretion to do exactly what Ms. Basie is asking you to do, to impose life without the possibility of parole. But when we examine the Gallian factors, defense, protection, character of the defendant, and when we combine those factors with the factors discussed in Miller that distinguish children from adults, I hope the court will see that that is not the correct thing to do in this case. Starting with the offense, an offense which was, the only word I can think of, Your Honor, is horrific.
I got that. I couldn't tell if it was just me and the way my brain works, but it sounded like he was talking in circles to me too. You can't have your cake and eat it too. You can't say, well, he's just a kid all the time, but then and this is where the statutes and the law and ethics versus the law gets a little interpretive, and what we think is morally and ethically right isn't always legally. Like in certain cases, I think people under the age of 18 should be able to get the death penalty, like school shooters and things like that. However, it's a moral dilemma that I don't think I'm qualified, other than being a mom, to talk about.
A child murdering the only two people in the world who really cared for and loved him and protected him, extinguishing their futures, extinguishing life as he knew it, obliterating the only source, really, of love and protection that he had ever known. And behind it, as we've heard, motivations that are, to put it mildly, very troubling. It is both tempting and it is inaccurate to take a look at the events of February 2025 and the weeks that led up to that offense and to conclude that there was nothing childlike about it. Many of the hallmarks of childhood behavior were there. The impulsivity of it, specifically. Going back, one of the things that struck me in talking to Nikita is that he didn't have a ramp up of anger or confrontation with his mother, with his stepfather.
Which makes it even more scary. If I were him and I would try to be getting my client extended supervision, I would not bring that up, because that right there makes him a very dangerous person. When you can go from being calm, cool, collected, not showing any signs of anger, to shooting someone in the head and living with their body for 2 weeks, that's a very scary thought. Very scary thought. And that is what makes life and just peopling very scary.
What he saw in 2024 was a high-profile terror attack. It filled him with hatred and rage, and he impulsively decided something has to be done about this. And within a relatively short period of time, when you consider that there was no feud going on with the victims in this case, he came to the conclusion that this was the necessary course of conduct. And within weeks, did the unthinkable because of something he saw on television that December. To understand how that could happen, and this was referenced by Ms. Basie, we have to back up a bit. In the years leading up to this crime, Nikita Casap was growing both more alone and dependent. He was alone, becoming increasingly isolated from the outside world. He had few friends, few connections, aside from his mother and stepfather. No one at school that he could really identify as a confidant. And he was becoming increasingly dependent on viewing and watching, compulsively watching horrific images of violence on the internet. These are not images that were thrust upon him. These were images that he initially sought out as a 11 or 12-year-old out of a sense of morbid curiosity. And as time progressed, he watched more and more content, which got deeper and darker. Along with those darkness, along with those dark images, along with that darkness, his thoughts followed on sort of a parallel track. So after that 2024 terror attack that made him want to take action, he went into a chat room that was filled with people who were spewing similar notions of hate. And there, I think it was accurately characterized by Ms. Basie as a scam. There, he met Basil. The FBI knows that person only by his screen name as asshole. Mr. Casap sat down and offered assistance in order to try and track this person down. They haven't yet done so, but they were intensely interested in trying to do it because of what online predators like this do. What this
Okay, I just have to stop real quick because Snipe Hunter, we have to talk about your comment because, and not in a bad way. Like, this is why we need to do a stream together, because this right here made me process something that I haven't processed since 2001. He sees a terror attack and decides to do his own. Sure. Yeah, he decided that something needed to be done. What about the millions of people who saw 9/11 on the TV, and we literally saw the second plane hit and the building fall? You think if nobody was radicalized, or very few people were radicalized after that, this is a bull crap excuse. Bull crap. I'm throwing my bullshit flag. I need to get those. Okay, we need to go buy some flags. No. Would you fall for this? Angel, would you fall for this? No. Okay, you heard it from here. Yeah. You heard it here first. Baby Squid wouldn't even fall for this crap.
person did to carry out the scam was first to recognize Nikita Casap as a mark, as a vulnerable, immature, non-skeptical individual that could be used and exploited for his own purposes. The dark thoughts and the thoughts of violence, as Ms. Basie noted, weren't being crammed down his throat, but what Assel did was to offer a sense of direction and purpose to say, we've got you, this is the plan, you are part of something bigger.
If they would have approached him, I would have seen that as okay. However, he approached them. Oh. Okay. 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 Yeah, if you have if you believe that story, yeah, I'll bite my tongue. Yeah, I have yet to see any signs of remorse. Yeah. Like, there are other things to do. If he would have approached them, I wouldn't completely understand, but I could sort of see this lawyer's point. But he approached them. That completely turned it on its head.
The pitch that he made was rooted in deception and manipulation and lies. And as was noted, it entailed the transfer of significant funds to one or both of these individuals. And the transfer of those funds was stressed to Mr. Casap as being part of some sort of a coherent military strategy. Even in the description that Ms. Basie gave, there was this wild goose chase nature. Go here, go there, put funds in over here. And what struck me as I read that back and forth was how any mature, vaguely skeptical, fully functional adult would have looked at what they were saying, these individuals, and said, you're being conned. You need to get out of this. These people are con artists. The process used by this man and people like him is to find lonely, isolated, confused, and perhaps anger-filled individuals who want to channel that anger and to exploit it. And if you make them believe that they are part of something bigger, then the course of conduct that may seem unthinkable at one point becomes very real. Nikita Casap went from having no history of violent acts against other individuals, no feud with his parents, nothing going on like that in December of 24, other than this history of watching very dark and disturbing videos. He went from that to the events of February 2025, just 5 or 6 weeks later. That individual referred to, associated with nihilistic, violent extremists who delivered the pitch to Nikita Casap, was the individual referenced in United States Attorney Benjamin Tableson's letter to the court. That was the person who targeted Nikita, manipulated, and misled him into thinking that he was on some sort of a mission. I will quote Mr. Tableson's words from that letter. These extremists target children and other vulnerable victims online. This is a serious and growing national security threat to the United States. It is a very significant interest to federal law enforcement in general, and it was of significant interest as applied to Mr. Casap in particular. When I asked Mr. Tableson to write a letter to simply memorialize what Mr. Casap had done and the assistance provided, I didn't ask him to stress that nature that these people target children. He's saying it because it's true. It's what they do. Nikita Casap.
Yes, he is right. It's what they do. We've seen it. We've read some of the documents. However, he is 17 years old and should know that unaliving people is wrong. Like, I don't. It's one thing I can't get over with lawyers, and when I read stuff or when I hear people talk and try to explain stuff, it's like, you know that unaliving people is wrong from Angel. Is taking someone else's life okay?
No.
You heard it here first, people. A 3-year-old knows that taking someone else's life is wrong. Oh, the more you know. And Jeffrey, thank you for the $2 super chat. Baby Squid's my first YouTube studio fun. You're a couple months too late because she's already uploaded shorts. She uploaded her first short at like 11 months old. And Harry, thank you for the $10 super chat. Nutella funds. You want Telltale? Did you? Hey, look, you got Nutella funds. You say thank you?
Thank you.
Nutella funds.
Wasn't a juvenile under Wisconsin law, but that meant nothing to the people who were directing him, to the people who were exploiting him and lying to him to make him think that he was on some sort of I don't know how else to put it, a military operation. So this offense was both a horrifying failure on Nikita Casap's part, one that he has taken accountability for, and it was a result of purposeful, evil manipulation by these online predators. Impulsivity, lack of maturity, vulnerability to negative influences, including these online individuals and the online content that he was becoming consumed with. These are clear markers of the hallmarks that make children constitutionally different from adults. That letter from the Assistant U.S. Attorney memorialized March 21st, 2025 voluntary interview, which Nikita Casap conducted with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. There was a proffer letter, yes, but there was no consideration given for that interview. The only consideration is that what you say during this meeting will not be used against you. But there was no leniency. There was no deal which he was attempting to engage in. And obviously from your review of the plea form, did not result in legal benefit. Just weeks after engaging with these online predators and committing the terrible acts that he had committed, Nikita Casap was sitting down with the FBI doing a voluntary interview to help them in any way that he could to catch the online predators referenced by Attorney Tableson. That takes us back to one of the factors which we know makes children different, their character. We know that terrible, horrible acts, when they are committed by fully formed adults with fully formed minds, can be powerful evidence of deeply rooted, ingrained depravity. The same cannot be said for children. Children are capable of change that adults are not. Having just been arrested, sitting in a detention center in Kansas, Nikita Casap sat down with an individual who was at that center, and she gave him a book about Christianity. But more importantly, as Nikita told me, she talked to him about Christianity. It wasn't the first time he discovered that religion. He was aware of it. But the significance of the meeting is that it dramatically changed Nikita Casap's view of everything that he had done. It changed him.
It doesn't matter to me. Remorse only goes so far. And to me, I don't know about y'all, but this is just my 2 cents because it's my channel and that's what I do. If he would have shown remorse, like, oh my God, I did it, and then called the cops immediately and was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, what did I do? What did I do? But he didn't. He only showed remorse after he was charged, met with someone, and now says, I'm giving my life to God. I'm a Christian, don't get me wrong. I'm not the world's worst Christian like Mo, but I'm not too far from it. I'm a recovering Catholic, you know. However, to me, that just screams, I'm trying to save my ass and not, I found God and I actually regret what I did.
His view of the world in general. All of the hate-filled rhetoric, the horrible things that were referenced in that chat between him and his online, for lack of a better term, handlers, those things by and large were gone after that moment. True believers in extremist movements, true believers in hateful movements, they do not abandon their creed the moment that they come into custody. Quite the contrary, what we see very often is that they will raise a flag so that they can find comfort and companionship with other people who are like-minded. No word of hate or hateful ideology, no continuation of those dark, disturbing thoughts. Within a month, he is sitting down with the good guys, trying to help them catch the bad guys.
Yeah, only so in exchange for not being charged federally. Like he didn't do it out of the kindness of his heart. He did it because he didn't want to be charged again.
Character with capacity to embrace good and reject evil that had once been embraced. That is what makes the character of a child different from that of an adult. Nikita's character, I think, is also reflected in his decision to take responsibility for these crimes, to walk into court and to say what he had done, knowing what the state's recommendation full well would be. You know as well as I do, Judge, that when there are individuals who are being asked, plead to the most serious charges possible in the state, with the most serious recommendation that will be coming, even in the light of powerful or strong evidence for the state, there are people that are tempted to say, then I want my day in court. Let's play for the fumble. Let's hope for a miracle and put everybody through this. What benefit am I getting out of it?
And Jeff, welcome back. It is so good to see you. I meant to message you yesterday and today to see how you were doing, and I'm so glad to see you. It makes my heart happy having you here. Yeah, he took a plea deal. He pled guilty to counts 1 and 2, which were in Wisconsin, I believe it's called capital murder, in exchange for counts 3 through 10 being dismissed. And I guess my big question was he going to be charged federally? And it sounds like he sat down with the feds and told them everything he knew in exchange for not being charged. So no federal documents. If it was Florida, I would have been able to see that letter, and that wouldn't have been a question that I've had for the last 6 months. But here we are. Feeling better, but have a ways to go. Well, you keep working on it and let me know if you need me.
Didn't do that. When the court says a child's character is not as well formed as an adult, that his traits are less fixed, actions less likely to be evidence of depravity of mind that is a more formal and legalistic way. For the court to say what we know to be true about many people, and children in particular, that they are more than their worst actions. They are more than their worst deeds. And that the facts that are contained in the criminal complaint does not fully encapsulate Nikita Casap or the person that he will one day be far off into the future. A word about protection of the public. Allowing professionals to one day ask, should this human being who committed a terrible crime during childhood be considered for supervised release? That does not unduly depreciate the seriousness of the offense, nor does it put the community at risk. Obviously, the individual decision that people would ask at a much later date will come with the benefit of volumes of data regarding his behavior in prison from here on out. And they will have the opportunity to observe whether or not this dramatic turnaround that he has gone through, and that I think was evidenced by the letters submitted to the court, has continued. And that will require from him, from his own perspective, an additional lifetime, or more than an additional lifetime, of pro-social good behavior within the prison system. And I don't think that's the kind of thing that can be faked. He would not be seriously considered for release without that 20 years of the turnaround continuing. I don't think that there is a need to impose life without the possibility of parole in order to adequately deter people from this kind of thing. As we noted, first off, this was a destructive act on many levels, including an act of self-destruction. It was Nikita Casap obliterating the only 2 people in the world who cared for him. And I can't imagine that anybody, in viewing the court's sentence and hearing that he was placed in prison for life with some reasonable eligibility for extended supervision, would come to the conclusion that he got off easy.
For reference, extended supervision and how it does not work. Same county a few years ago, Morgan Geyser, Slenderman, same exact county. So just for reference, Daryl Brooks, this case, and Slenderman stabbing was all in the same county. Welcome to Waukesha. You can see how well extended release worked for Morgan Geyser. She had to be tracked down to Illinois and dragged back to jail. It's not, and she didn't even succeed in what she was trying to do. Don't see this going well.
That his darkest hour now seems somewhat more palatable or more attractive. Considering what he has done since his arrest, abandoning the darkness and the hate, sitting down to work with authorities, working with them as they work to make the community safer. Going back to protection, if the people on earth who do terrible things, and there will always be people on earth who do terrible things, if they responded to involvement in the system in the way that Mr. Casap has, by abandoning those thoughts, working with authorities, owning up and taking responsibility promptly for his actions, if they did that, then our world would be a safer and better place for it. And if it was recognized by a court who said, given that I am going to allow one day you to be considered for extended supervision, we would be a better, safer place for it. When Nikita Casap
It is in the water. It's cryptosporidium. Google it. After the stream.
December 2024 went into that chapter. Because Basie is right. He wasn't someone who was being prodded into committing acts of violence. He was filled with anger and hatred and rage. And I do wonder what would have happened if instead of the online predators who lured him into that scam, if it was someone like the lady in Kansas who sat down and talked with him about other things. Because he was a child, I think it would have mattered. Nikita Casap legally begins and ends here. His case begins and ends here, but the moral, legal, common sense understandings that children are different, more vulnerable, and less culpable than adults, those understandings remain. Nikita Casap will have to earn. He will have to fight for the ability to one day even be considered for extended supervision. A fight which will have to include a lifetime of change and improvement and atonement. And I think that that fight is a good thing. Thank you.
Right. Credit, 369 days, I think.
Yes.
All right. Agree with that, Ms. Basie?
I do.
Okay. Mr. Casap, what do you want to tell me?
Before he starts talking, what do you think he'll say? Do you think he will cry or try to cry? My chances are no.
Your Honor, I want to begin by apologizing to the family and friends of both my mother and my stepfather, John, to everyone who loved them, to everyone who was pain.
Just for reference, this is at 1.5 speed, so you can see how slow he's talking. If we were to listen to this at regular speed, I don't think I'd make it. He is, oh my God, so slow.
And grief because of my actions. I am sorry. As much as anyone, I knew that my mom and Donald were kind, loving people. There were people who took care of me. And there were people who took care of others. My mom would always check on me to make sure I was eating well and dressed properly. She paid attention.
Yes, I can. We'll try it at regular speed for a quick second, just to see where we end up.
Into little things, and did so with love. One of the things we would do together is to take long walks around the neighborhood, and we'd talk about school, our day, anything. Another fond memory I have is how her and I used to laugh watching cartoons together. And I would worry about my mom when she had to use a ladder or hop on the countertop to reach something high on the shelves at home. I would worry about her safety and insist that she'd let me get it for her.
Going back up.
I remember I would always ask to help carry grocery bags for her or help with whatever problem she was facing. This was the mother I killed. The person I just chose to kill. The person who loved me no matter what. The mother who always took care of me. I miss talking to her and
While he's breaking up, this is a good point. I'm sure they have him on meds, and that would make sense as to why he speaks so slowly. Yeah, that chair, every hearing that we've watched, and I think we missed one hearing, but other than that, all the ones that we've watched, that chair rocks. He fidgets like there's no tomorrow. But yeah, I didn't call the tears. I don't know if they're real because I can't see his face, but that chair's a rocking.
being with her. I miss going to the zoo and hiking with her. I miss my mom. I would much rather be with her and my stepdad now in heaven than being on earth, having done what I did. What I did was vile. What I did was thoughtless. What I did was wrong. Even though Don and I weren't
Snipe, he talks like he's a little behind, shall we say. He also does have, he was not born in this country, so he also does have an accent when he speaks. You can spend time in the US and you can kind of grow up here, but if you learn to talk in a foreign country, and that's the accent you have, a lot of times that's the accent you're going to keep throughout your life. So he has a European, Moldova, I think that's what they said, accent. So take that into account too, that he moved here when he was young. English might not be his first language.
as close as my mom. He was always a respectful and decent stepdad. He treated my mom well, and he treated me well. Don was calm and giving. When we did Yoru together, and mulching or played basketball, he treated me like a son. I miss my stepdad. He didn't deserve what happened. No one deserves that. My mom and my stepdad were always supportive of me. I remember back in middle school when I used to play basketball and do track and field, my parents always made sure to be there with my games and track meets. They were supportive in every aspect of my life. There is no excuse for what I did. The truth is I became obsessed with hateful thoughts and feelings. I felt like the world was a sick, evil place, and that my extreme actions to try to change it were justified. I thought I was part of a revolution, part of a war, and I told myself the bad things have to happen in war. Looking back, I wish I had stepped away from the hate-filled content instead of intentionally seeking it out. I wish I had the wisdom to at least question the extremists that I was listening to. I wish I had chosen right instead of wrong. I cannot blame the videos, propaganda, and people that inspired my actions because I had the ability to choose right instead of wrong. To the other young people that they are targeting right now, that would be my message. You have the ability to choose right instead of wrong. In March of last year, I accepted Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior. I have tried since then to live up to his message of love. I have tried to serve God's will and will continue to do so wherever I am. I pray every day for God's forgiveness, and through all those whom I have hurt by my actions, I ask for forgiveness as well. I am very sorry for what I have done.
Thank you. Anything else?
I agree, French. And this is where it's not seeing his face is very hard to actually tell because you know,
Mom.
but I agree he seems more worried about his future than the people he took. You notice how he always said, I miss doing things. I miss doing things. I miss not my mom was great. My mom did this. My mom loved doing this. It was all him.
Mommy, in the house.
You know, messing with my hair.
Mommy,
No, you're not.
mommy. Ow, ow.
You know, I am
Mommy.
sometimes involved. I've been involved in working and talking to new people and in this county and throughout the state. And I tell them that, you know, one part of the job is that sometimes it seems day after day you do the same thing, day after day after day after day. And then you get to that case where you earn everything you get in a year, you earn it on that day. And this is that case because I'm not immune to the fact that I have a very young man here and that whatever decision I make is a decision that is going to affect that young man for the rest of his life. And as well, it is a decision that is going to affect the lives of his friends and family members who spoke today, who presented letters or information today. And I understand that whatever happens here is going to take on a life of its own as we move forward. And I understand that at age 18, that Mr. Casap's got a long, long, long life ahead of him. And I understand that, and you know, I'm going to look at, I think, some of the victim impact statements. The sister-in-law wrote something, and here's what she said. Now that grief shows up in different ways, Sometimes it is sadness. Sometimes it is anger. Sometimes it is silence so heavy it fills the room, but it's always there. Grief lives in our home now. It has changed the air in our house. It has changed the way we speak to each other. It has changed the sound of laughter. It has changed us. And in another part of the letter, she talks about, instead of grieving in peace, I became executor of Tatiana's estate. Our daily conversations are about probate, insurance, paperwork, court dates. It feels like this crime follows us home and sits at our kitchen table every day. We don't get to escape it. So I'm very cognizant that what I do here today has long-term effects on Nikita Casap, and that what I do here today has long-term effects on the friends and family members of Donald Mayer and Tatiana Casap. And I don't hesitate to mention their names. I know the DAs are constrained and they have to say victim A, victim B, but I think it would be inappropriate not to name them, not to say who they are, not to acknowledge their friends and families and their humanity as well. And so these are all things that I consider, and Mr. Raffel really hit the nail on the point as well. He's very knowledgeable about the considerations that I have, as is Ms. Basie. I have to look at the galleon factors. I have to look at the nature of the offense, the impact on the community. When I say community, I mean the community as a whole and family members as a whole as well. And I have to look at Mr. Nikita Casap as an individual. And there's a lot at work here. Everybody knows that, I have no choice but to impose 2 life sentences, but that pursuant to 973.014 of the Wisconsin statutes, that this court can set an eligibility date for extended supervision at least 20 years in the future, or some other determinate time, or I can choose to find that the person is not eligible for release to extended supervision. And those are some of the legal framework, part of the legal framework that I look at. I also, of course, look at the fact that, the legislature has said when somebody's convicted of these offenses, that the effect of it is that you have to impose a life sentence. These are first-degree intentional homicide sentences. And again, I consider as well the fact that there are read-in offenses also, and they speak for themselves. And we know it's all part and parcel of the same incident and unfortunate circumstances that have involved Ms. Tatiana Casap, Donald Mayer, the family, and Nikita Casap, the theft, the gun, et cetera, and so on. So these are all things I look at. And I'm also cognizant of our correctional system. Our Supreme Court in its wisdom has said, judges, every term, you got to go visit a prison. You got to know what's going on in those places. You have to understand what's going on in the correctional system. And over the years, I've had the opportunity to do that. And when I look at what's going on, I know that there are prisons that are very secure, maximum security, minimum security, medium security. I know what goes on in those places. And all of these things, my knowledge of the correctional system, the facts of this case, all these circumstances are things that I consider when I make a determination. So what's important here? We went over the timeline of what happened here, the brutal, senseless, I cannot understand, and nor can anybody understand, I think, or put any kind of rationale behind what happened. The homicides on or about February 11th, the tracking of Nikita Casap in Illinois and Iowa on February 24th, and then his eventual custody on February 28th. So we know what happened by the inference that Nikita Casap didn't leave the house for about 2 weeks after the murders, the killing.
That right there, I really like this judge. He's becoming one of my favorite judges because he is not mean, but he tells it like it is. He doesn't sugarcoat what he has to do. It's refreshing to not see someone like Judge Darrow in the same county talk so much that she talks herself out of what she has to do, and she tries to like sugarcoat it and make it like it's just rubbed me the wrong way. This judge I really like. What will he do? Will he or won't he?
We know that of the bizarre circumstances, because there's video of it, because he's been forthright in saying what happened. We know that he lived with the dead for about 2 weeks. And I don't think anybody can understand that. I can't rationalize why. Other than to look at, I think, some of the information that Ms. Basie gave me, that there were other loose ends that had to be tied up, things that had to be done before he could move on and go forward. So what we know, because he talked to a young woman, a classmate, weeks before, he had in his mind that he would kill his parents. We know that this was a premeditated act. We know that he threatened that fellow student. We know, given the briefing with the FBI, the Department of Justice, some of the factors that went into some of his actions. I think Ms. Basie's right. He got scammed. He thought he was part of a big plan. He thought he was part of a big plan that was going to do something, that was going to have some import, that was going to make a difference for him and for others. But he was scammed. And it really tells me a lot and confirms, I think, much what Mr. Raffel said about the impulsivity that was exhibited by Nikita Casap in believing these things and not thinking through them. The vulnerability by believing these things, and the fact that he couldn't recognize this as nonsense, because that's what it was. And that's what he involved himself in, and that's what sucked him in as well. And I don't dispute that Nikita Casap, as a 17-year-old, and I think Mr. Raffel very capably defined what it means to be a 17-year-old, to be a juvenile, but at the same time, for purposes of this offense, an adult in an adult system. He was impulsive, he was vulnerable, his character was not well formed. But I have to look at that in what's going on here, right? This isn't the kind of offense that we often see where there was an outburst of emotion, an outburst of rage and accessibility to a gun or a knife or some weapon, and that weapon was yielded in a moment of impulsivity and rage. That's not what happened here. We have to look at the big picture. We have to look at the premeditation. We have to look at the horrific nature of the offenses. If these were strangers, I would say these are terrible, horrific, violent acts. And because these are the people closest to Nikita Casap, these acts are all those things and not understandable as well. And
That's my point. Oh my God, this judge is my spirit animal. That is completely my point. If these were random people, we would say it's horrible. But these were the people he was closest to, which adds this whole level of like, if he's willing to do this to people that were closest to him, what is he willing to do to people who aren't close to him? And he has no idea who they are. I heard an Investigation Discovery used to have a show called Joe Kenda. And he said, once you kill once, it's just numbers from there. And that stuck with me over time, because once you take one life, is it not just a numbers game from then on out? It's just, I love this judge.
And inconceivable and unforgivable as well. Because, as he said in his own statement, his mother was the one that loved him. He loved his mother, and his stepfather was calm and giving and supportive. And so he grew up in that environment, people who provided for him, people who gave him what he needed. And for whatever reason, I can't explain it. And, we can talk about influence from the internet. We can talk about being on the margin, being somebody who had been maybe an outcast at school. We can talk about all those things, and we can know that perhaps those things contributed to what he did. But it is extremely difficult to take a look at what happened here and to explain it, much less understand it. Inexplicable and not understandable as to what occurred here, no matter what the influences were. So when I look at this, I try to find, I always balance things. I look at, like the pros and cons. What are the pros about Nikita Casap? He's taken responsibility for what he did. He's taken responsibility for what he's done, and he talked to federal authorities in order to clarify some concerns that they had. Those are to his benefit. But I weigh that as to the horrific, terrible, inexplicable, not understandable acts that he involved himself in. And so, I don't disagree with Mr. Raffel. Young people have the capacity to change. And I see it every day in the criminal courts. I remark on it all the time. I did earlier today. Some guy was 38 years old, and he finally got sick and tired of going to jail again and again and again. In the last couple of years, it appears he changed his life. He did it at about 38 years of age, right? And his offenses were involving drugs and thievery and so on. And, I can look at that again over the years. I've seen it happen again and again and again. Maybe it's in their 30s, maybe it's in their 40s, people who were drug users or who engaged in retail theft in order to support drug problems. They make a change. They're tired of it. They get tired of that life. They get tired of being locked up. They get tired of neglecting friends and family because of drug habits. But
That's different than
how do I
murder.
know when that can happen? How do I know when somebody in a premeditated manner kills those who are closest to him? How do I know when somebody who, in essence, destroys his own life and chooses some harebrained ideas over the people closest to him? How do I know? How do I measure when and if that change can take place? If I said, oh, I'll let him be eligible for extended supervision, and the legal people here, the lawyers, know that doesn't mean he would get out in 20 years. It only means that there would be an opportunity for people to look at him to make a determination as to whether that might be appropriate. How do I know? What's the magic number? Is it 20 years? Is it at the, the age of reason at 60 years for somebody who does what Nikita Casap did? I can't answer that. I cannot answer that. I do
Nobody
not know.
can, Judge. Nobody can.
I don't know, given these horrific offenses, when that change might take place. I do know that people who are convicted of offenses, just like Nikita Casap, can go to minimal security prisons and experience some freedom to work in the community as well, but under the auspices of the Department of Corrections. I know how our system works now. I know that people who can change, who can exhibit, it's almost an oxymoron, pro-social behavior in prison, can be rewarded for that. I know how they can be, I know how the degree and level of confinement can change given change within the system. I know that, I understand that because I'm required to know that as a judge, because I'm required to make institutional visits. So what do I do with Nikita Casap? Do I believe he can change? I hope so. I hope so. And do I know when it'll happen? I don't. I don't have that crystal ball. No judge has that. But I do know that when I balance the good things, taking responsibility for what he's done, talking to federal officials to clarify dangerous and really scary situations about internet and young people and potential violence, and I balance that with the impact on friends and family. Donald Mayer and Tatiana Casap are gone. And what remains for their friends and family are some good memories, but as well, they go hand in hand, unfortunately, with terrible, awful memories of how they died, how they were brutally killed, and the bizarre circumstances surrounding what happened after they were killed. Those things will never go away for them. And so I do look at them as members of the community. I do look at the community in general. And I think the community knows that there are ways to improve one's lot within the correctional system. I know that it's frightening to think about when any change might happen. It's frightening to think about the things that took Nikita Casap to where he was. And, overall, as I sit here today, one of the things that comes to mind is really the fact that this is a sad, sad day. It's not a day of anger. It's a day of profound thought, because when I looked at these statements from friends and family members of Mr. Mayer and Tatiana Casap, I saw some grace and dignity in what they had to say. I saw the profound impact that it has on them. And I know this has profound impact on Nikita Casap as well, because of where he's going to go. So again, I weigh these things, and I'm led to the determination that, of course, life sentences have to be imposed. And I do impose on each count, 1 and 2, a life sentence. And I elect and I choose, and I do this with pause and hesitation, but I believe it to be the right thing. I choose to find that he's not eligible for release to extended supervision, because I don't know, given the nature of these acts. I do not know, given what occurred here, when and if and whether a profound and significant change can occur. That will be something for the people in the Department of Corrections to make a determination as they move forward. And they can do that within the framework of the levels of the prison or wherever he's going to be held. I'll order as well, I've indicated 369 days credit. I'll order payment of
369 days and a life sentence.
$350. That was for what?
Tow bill to get
The
the
tow
police
bills.
vehicle from Kansas to.
The tow bills, that's to be paid as a term of his sentence through prison wages. And because I'm not allowing for extended supervision, I'm not going to set any terms of extended supervision, but I will also order that he not have any contact with the family members of the victims unless those family members initiate contact themselves. I understand that one such person is his grandmother. So if she wishes to initiate contact with him, then he may at that time have contact with her, but not as to the members of the Donald Mayer family. I think I've done everything I need to do here today. Is there anything you think I've overlooked or omitted, Ms. Basie?
No, Your Honor.
All right, Mr. Raffel, anything?
No.
All right, Mr. Casap, you have 20 days to appeal this decision. If you wish to do so, consult with your attorney. He'll assist you in that regard.
Okay. Well, there's that. He can appeal the sentence, not the actual crimes, because he pled guilty. However, no parole, no extended supervision. Dude, kind of got what you got. That judge, I appreciate the fact that he said the victims' names. Even though the lawyers weren't referring to them, he was like, these people are people and they need to be treated as people, not letters, not numbers. Victim A and victim B, 1 and 2, no, they're humans. So with that, guys, I have to go cook dinner because I have to go to work tonight. So girls got to eat. I need to feed my family. We're just having tacos, so it's quick, but still. Thanks for hanging out with me with this. If you have not, this sent me down a long rabbit hole that I kind of had to get out of for a little bit because I was talking about it. And then I saw the mainstream media and other creators talk about it like a month later. This sent me down a rabbit hole of cases on Order of Nine Angels and 764. And there's a couple other ones. There was a case in, I think, either Vermont or New Hampshire. I think it was New Hampshire, where 764 caused a person to self-delete. There's a whole rabbit hole. I am following a case on Pacer right now from all of this research that I did. The person's name is Trippy. One of the people's names is Trippy. We will get into that probably now that this case is complete in a week or two. Also, coming up on the channel Thursday, we have the next Iranian stream about the morality police and what they are, what they do, how they got their power, and the members of the Iranian women's soccer team who will not be returning to the country and wondering what will happen to those who will. I've seen a lot of things about the Iranian conflict, but I've never actually seen people describe what the morality police are, how they got their power, and I'm going to cover that. Also, we do have the Bangor, Maine crash preliminary report that is out. And also some updates in the Ethan Pritchard, the Florida State football player who was attempted to be unalived. He was shot in the head and he survived. So his lawsuit has some updates and such. So watch for that coming up in the next few days. I might do another Monday stream next week because I just have so much content to get out that I'm running out of time. So we'll see what happens. But I will see you guys definitely on Thursday for talking about the morality police. Yay. Y'all have a great day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye, guys.